Would a lifeguard at a pool be a jerk for refusing to fetch a lost bracelet? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my friend she's ruining her child's life with the name she gave her? So I, 21-year-old female, have been friends with Laureen, 22-year-old female, for 17 years now, and we're really close. She recently gave birth to her daughter, and her husband recently told us the name. They decided to name their daughter Juliette, spelled G-H-I-U-L-I-Y-E-T-T-E, and her middle name is Maria. I thought the spelling was a joke, until they told me they are serious. I told her with that spelling of a simple but beautiful name is just going to ruin that little girl's life. She got mad and told me to stop ruining her mood and that I'm being mean. I'm completely honest, the spelling is just bad. Nothing else can explain it. Why ruin such a beautiful name by including letters that don't belong there? I texted her yesterday and told her that the little girl will try to change her name, or at least go by her middle name since it's normal. She told me to stop texting her, that I'm a bad friend and that I'm being the jerk for making fun of the name. I don't think I am. When I told her that the spelling is just bad, she went crazy. She told me that I'm the worst friend ever and that I would never be able to see her daughter again. After that, her husband sent me an email telling me to stop being so disrespectful. He thinks the spelling is cute and it just makes her unique. Unique, yes, but that's just going to make that little girl suffer and she will probably be bullied for that spelling. I haven't replied and honestly I don't think I'm the jerk here, but I thought I'd ask Reddit since y'all are the best to judge. So, am I the jerk for telling my friend that the name she gave her daughter is bad and will ruin her life? So usually I'd like to think that I'm pretty good with pronouncing names that are uncommon or I haven't seen very much. But even this spelling, I can tell for most people, you are going to have a real Aaron problem with substitute teachers. Or even regular teachers until they get explained how the name is supposed to be pronounced. I can just imagine somebody saying, Giuliette, is there a Giuliette in this class? Giuliette, are you here? Honestly, if anything, I think they should simplify that down to Juliet just to save them the time of having to write their name out. If you have to spell Juliet with 12 letters, I feel like you've took a wrong turn somewhere. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my daughter that this activity is only for my bio grandkids, and I'm not going to change the tradition even if she wants to force the step-grandkids everywhere? I will give some background. I am a pretty young grandmother. My daughter Jenny has 2 kids, 9 and 13. My daughter remarried to a man that has his own children, so I have step-grandkids, 11 and 10, so a total of 4 kids in the story. I will refer to them as bio and step-grandkids to make it as clear as possible. The 2 bio and step-grandkids don't get along well. Watching from the outside, it's easy to see that the 2 parents are pushing them together. I have heard so many complaints and informed the parents the forced bonding wasn't helping. They didn't take my advice and overall, all the kids have to do basically everything together. I've been teaching my bio grandkids how to sew for a while. Every year we've been making a blanket over a few months. The 2 kids love it and I enjoy the tradition. I've informed the bio kids will start soon on the project. They seem excited. I got a call from my daughter asking me to include the step-grandkid. The bio grandkids were talking about the blanket and it made the other grandkids upset they aren't invited. So now my daughter called me to include them. I told her no, that this is something I just do with my bio grandkids. We have done this for years and I'm not changing it. I also informed her that forcing them into the tradition will not help the kids. They already dislike their step-siblings. She called me a jerk and according to my other daughter, it has caused issues in her family. I'm conflicted here and I definitely think you're gonna have a lot of varying opinions based on people who feel, should grandparents unwaveringly accept step-grandkids? Personally, considering the history here and the bond with their bio grandkids, it's hard for me to say that OP is outright the jerk here, especially when it's such a forced thing, but I can definitely see how a number of people would say OP could be the jerk. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not enjoying my boyfriend's surprise to me while sick? The past couple of weeks I've been extremely sick and haven't felt like leaving the house or doing anything. This sucks for me because nobody likes to be sick, but I'm a busybody and being bedridden is awful. I also haven't seen my female 19 boyfriend, male 20 in a while, and he keeps asking me when I'll see him, and I tell him I wanted to wait until I'm at least not running fevers because I wouldn't want to pass anything to him, especially because he has little siblings and a baby sister, and I would feel awful if I got them sick. He's very persistent though, and keeps saying how much he misses me and he wants to see me. He texts me multiple times a day asking me to come over, and I keep telling him not yet, especially because my fevers are up in the 104 range. Yesterday, both my parents were at work, so it was just me at home. I've been in and out of sleep because I've been sick, so I was sleeping most of the day yesterday. Mind you, my boyfriend works Monday to Friday, so in no way did I expect this. Around 2 p.m., I'm waking up to someone rubbing my back. Before opening my eyes, I think it's my father home on his lunch. Nope, it's my boyfriend. I'm very shocked at first and ask him what he's doing here. He said he couldn't stand being apart and wanted to surprise me. I then asked how he even got in because my parents always lock the door before leaving, and he says he guessed the garage combination because it's the same digits as my phone password, which is what my family used as a common password. I'm a bit taken aback, and I tell him it wasn't cool to show up uninvited. He told me it seemed like I was ignoring him and he wanted to come see what's up. We went back and forth about it for a while, and me keeping my point of it's rude to show up uninvited. And he just tells me I should be grateful to see him and I need to stop whining. After a while, he left, mostly because I made a point to say my parents don't know you're here and wouldn't be happy with me having you over here without their permission. Since yesterday, he has not talked to me. Am I the jerk? Thank you for all the feedback. I'm trying to read everything, but there's a new comment every time I refresh. I'll give an update once I talk to him. I just don't know how I want to approach this yet. A lot of you are worried about my fevers. Sorry for the exaggeration. I've been sick for a couple of weeks, but my fever just started this week. I've not had high fevers for weeks. Started with just congestion and a sore throat, and recently just turned into cough and fever, and yes, I've been to the doctors. Thank you. I mean, in general, if this was like a shared space or maybe even a place of her own where he had a key, maybe you could argue OP's maybe the jerk. But definitely not the jerk here, because the most creepy thing is he guessed the garage passcode to let himself in when he was never invited, never given the code. I mean, what the heck kind of reception are you expecting in that case? Our next story is, am I the jerk for digging in my heels and refusing to invite my estranged father and his wife to my wedding? I'm 30-year-old female, getting married this year, and the wedding is going to be smaller, so those we want to invite know when the wedding will take place and are confirmed to be free. Invites will go out in the summer, but unofficially the people who will be invited have been invited. This was because it was important to us to have those closest to us present, and we didn't want a hugely expensive wedding. This has become a problem because I did invite my grandmother, paternal, and she has a relationship with my estranged father, while I do not. Background is needed here. When my brother and I were 4, we lost our mom. Our mom's twin sister helped our dad out a lot after mom died. We actually lived with her for 7 or 8 months while our dad was spiraling and losing control of himself. She was there for our first day of school. She fed us and clothed us and protected us a lot during the period we lived with her. And once dad pulled himself together and took us back, she was still the person taking care of us after school and on Saturdays or Sundays when our dad would work. She was essential to us. She and mom were orphans, so it was just her for the maternal side, and dad's side were not close by and didn't play much of a role in those earlier childhood memories. But our aunt did. Then my dad got engaged and life changed fast. My dad's wife didn't want our aunt around anymore. She wanted to become the mom and she didn't feel like my aunt would make that easy on her. So my dad and his wife, fiance at the time, moved us out of state and we moved around a lot, so my aunt could not get any visitation rights to us. We didn't get to see or speak to her at all after that. I know she fought for us. She did track us down a couple of times when we moved again. We missed her like crazy, and over the decade that followed, Dad tried to erase all traces of our aunt and mom and attempted to create a little nuclear family with the 4 of us. But we hated him and we hated her, and when we were teenagers, we tracked down our aunt, and at 18, we moved out of our dad's house and ended all contact with them. My grandmother was aware of all this, and when we were kids, she was understanding and did attempt to advocate for us to see our aunt. But once my dad found out I was getting married through a person who wasn't actually invited to the wedding but knew I was engaged, he was talking to my grandmother and he told her how badly he and his wife want to come and how sad they are that they've been removed so completely from our lives. Now my grandmother is saying they should be invited, or at least my father, because he's still my father. I told her it would not happen and refused to compromise with just him, so she's unhappy and she said I'm taking things too far and doing what they did. Only I know how harmful it can be long term. Am I the jerk? OP is definitely not the jerk here, and I don't think anybody who hasn't lived directly what OP has lived through has any real say on whether or not OP's right or wrong here, especially when it just comes down to who they do and don't want at their wedding. Our next story is, am I the jerk when my husband doesn't tell me what he's doing all the time? Am I the jerk when I, 34-year-old female, get mad when my husband, 35-year-old male, does things without telling me? He owns his own office and the office closes at 5 p.m. The house is about a 20-minute drive away, but he usually gets home between 5 to 6 p.m. because he gets out late sometimes. This last situation, he went out to eat dinner with his brother and a business representative to discuss business things. The reason I got mad was he got home at 6 p.m. and never told me anything about his plans. We usually eat after we put the kids to bed. About an hour later, we were getting our young kids to bed, and after I ask if he's planning on cooking potatoes for dinner, he says no, but he could make me some because he ate already. I ask if he's joking that he ate already, and he tells me he went out to dinner. I yelled at him for not telling me. He said that he didn't need to tell me because he was still home around the same time he always gets home, and that I am absurd for wanting him to tell me where he's at. Not only am I mad because he didn't tell me, but the fact that he doesn't think he has to tell me. Also mad because he doesn't do these things very often, and that once in a while is okay because he doesn't do it every day. Am I the jerk? I mean, I think if you're going out to dinner, it's kind of weird not to mention it to your partner that you're married to. It just seems like a bizarre, out-of-touch distance thing. It's not even a, why are you not telling me where you are all the time? It's just a, why are you not communicating the way you should in a marriage? Especially when there's an expectation that when you get home, you'll have dinner with your wife. If you make a decision that's going to change that in any way, you probably should tell her, right? This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law to find another provider because I'm not it? My sister-in-law has always called me a disgrace and talked about how men are providers. She has repeatedly told me this and tried to shame me for having a better education and job than my husband. My husband's family is Mexican immigrants, and my sister-in-law lives in Mexico and has a Mexican husband. She recently fled the house looking for someone to stay with. My in-laws live in another state, but my sister with her 3 children came to us instead. We live in a small house in San Diego that was my grandma's. My in-laws live close to Houston. My husband wasn't home when his sister arrived, and I sent her away when she showed up on my doorstep. I told her to go find another provider because I'm not it. My husband heard and came home from work, and I told him that he had to pay for her hotel and plane tickets out of his money to our in-laws' place. He and his family have been ticked at me. His sister has constantly bullied me for over 10 years for dumb butt things like not making my man a plate. I've never liked her or her ex. I do not want her in my home, and I wasn't having it because she has no dang money because of her own stupidity of being a wifey. I refuse to support her, and now my husband's family is saying he should leave me and stay in Houston. I told him he can choose his sister over me, and if he's not back in 24 hours, I'm throwing his crap on the street and letting the homeless take it. I don't think OP's the jerk here. The bottom line is, they don't actually respect OP, and the second OP lets them in, the more they're just gonna try to walk all over OP and take whatever they can from them while not respecting them. I mean, I get it, they're trying to get out of a bad situation, but even still, that doesn't make it your responsibility to make your living situation way worse by helping out a person that doesn't respect you. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my mom I'll move out versus paying $600 a month rent? I'm 25 years old, was paying $60 a week rent for a few years. I recently started a new temp job that pays pretty decent, and they decided to keep me with the company last week. This morning, my mom texted me to say, rent starts up again, $150 a week. I just told her I'll move out. I already pay for my own meals. I only have my small bedroom to call my own in their house. I can rent a studio apartment 3 or 4 times the size of my room for a few hundred more, or could rent a room with friends for less than my mom is trying to charge me. It would be one thing if they cooked and cleaned for me every day and I was raking up their bills, but I do my own thing, pay my own bills. I never even really cross paths with my parents besides when I'm getting off work. My mom's definitely ticked that I said that. I can tell. But I'm also upset the person who birthed me is trying to get me to pay what I would pay a landlord for rent just to sleep in her house. Even $100 a week, I would have been more inclined to be okay with. But $600 a month just to be able to sleep at my parents' house seems a little high. If I'm paying $600 a month, I think I would deserve my own spaces around the house also as I would with the landlord. It seems having a landlord would be a better deal for me in this case. I mean, if you're saying you don't want to pay $600, you'd rather move out, that doesn't make you the jerk. How would you be the jerk for saying, you know what, that's too much money for me, I'm just going to try to find a better living situation for me elsewhere? I am actually struggling to find a situation in this where you would be a jerk. I mean, what, OP's talking $800, $900 a month for a nice place like that? If you can swing that, go for it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for taking the dog out only twice a day? I, 18-year-old male, was talking to a previous coworker of mine, 40 to 50-year-old female, about unrelated stuff when I brought up how I need to go home to take out the dog. She asked if the dog had been taken out already, and I said no. She doesn't go outside in the mornings. She got pretty angry and told me that it is animal abuse and cruel to only take a dog out that rarely. The dog is taken out when I come home from school, 2 to 5 p.m., and at night, 7 to 10 p.m. When I come home from school, she isn't in a hurry to go outside 90% of the time. My dog is a 5-year-old West Siberian Laika. When my dog was younger, she did have a few occasions where she pooped inside when no one was home to take her out, but most of those times it was because of diarrhea. We got it checked out and the pooping inside ended. For more context, I didn't want a dog. It was my mom who brought up the idea. I told her that if we get one, I will not be taking care of it since I already have 3 cats to take care of. My mom is usually the one taking her out at night, but she only takes her out in the mornings if it's a vacation day or her work starts late. I've been convinced that the dog being taken out only twice is alright since she seems to be happy. But my ex-coworker's comment made me a bit paranoid about it. Am I the jerk? I think if you take your dog out twice a day, it wouldn't be a problem if you're actually going out for a proper walk twice a day. If you're just talking about letting them roam around the front yard or the backyard or, walking them up the street for 5 minutes twice a day, that's probably not going to be enough for a dog that's a little bit more energetic. I get that OP's trying to avoid any responsibility here, but not having compassion for an animal that has to go 14 hours between being able to relieve themselves, how can you know that and not be the jerk for not just in the morning letting them out for 5 to 10 minutes? Our next story is, am I the jerk? My boyfriend's roommate called me racist. My 22-year-old female spent a lot of time at my boyfriend's 24-year-old male with his roommate 27-year-old male. Both are Chinese. My boyfriend and I have had some issues due to cultural differences, but we always work them out or come to some sort of compromise, which I love, as we don't want to completely change the other, since we have very different cultures and we should find a balance. The roomie, on the other hand, couldn't care less. He and I have had some issues in the past, but I've always tried to understand if it was a cultural thing or him just being a jerk. The most recent issue happened because of the Chinese New Year. I had seen my dad earlier that day, and he thought that it would be nice to send me back to their house with cake in honor of their New Year's, even though he only met my boyfriend once and has never met the roomie. This is where I got ticked. I arrived at their house with the cake, thinking they would be happy with a little gift, but only one was. My boyfriend sent my dad a text with a thanks, but roomie just looked at the cake and didn't say anything. I thought he was willing to taste it before saying anything, but the thank you never came. Later that night, I told my boyfriend that I was upset that he didn't say anything. Boyfriend explained that in their culture, they don't say thanks very often, but they will at least acknowledge it, and he admits that the roomie was very rude to not say anything. He told me to just let it go as nothing was going to change, so I did until today. Roomie and I were having a little conversation, and I offered him a beer, to which he said thank you. That ticked me off. In a calm voice, I said that it's interesting how he doesn't say thank you for New Year's cake. That was a gift from my dad, but he says thank you for a beer. He got mad and said that in his culture, they don't say thank you often. I told him that if we were in China surrounded by his culture, I would understand, but right now we are in Canada, where we do say thank you a lot, and I've been very understanding of the cultural differences so far, but this one means a lot to me, and he needs to respect how I feel on the matter the same way I would if I was in China. He called me racist and said that I was too narrow-minded to understand, and that I was the one being disrespectful, not him. At this point, my boyfriend stepped in saying that he was wrong and that he was rude for not even acknowledging the gift. Rumi just got even more upset and said that I was being racist and on top of that, ruining a friendship. So please tell me, Reddit, am I the jerk in this situation for wanting him to say thank you, or was I just being rude and racist? I don't know, I'm really conflicted here because if it's like a real cultural thing, I guess I would understand. But at the same time, like if you give a gift and you're like kind of standing there, if he's aware of the culture that he's in, it's not like it hurts to say thank you. It's not like it's disrespecting his culture to say thank you. I think maybe it's a bit of both sides here. I feel like OP probably went a little far in saying what they said. You know, the whole, you're not in China, you're in Canada. But at the same time, like, he should have acknowledged the gift, right? Especially when they're aware enough that people in Canada who give gifts expect some kind of acknowledgement. Our next story is, am I the jerk for screaming at my son's girlfriend's mom to get out of my house? My husband and I come from a small religious town, which we are strongly religious. We don't follow the same strict rules as everyone else. We are very open-minded. Our oldest son's, 18, Jacob's, girlfriend moved in with us on her 18th birthday due to finding out that she was pregnant and her parents were extremely controlling. We were shamed by everyone in our town for the pregnancy itself, but we never paid a mind to it. 3 weeks ago, Jacob's girlfriend had her baby. She kept it a secret from her mother, but we're assuming someone at the hospital opened their mouths. 2 nights ago, we had a banging at my door, and it was her mother demanding to come in and see this secret baby. My son's girlfriend said I could let her in if she promised to calm down, in which I relayed the message and obliged. Her mother was calm at first, until she began talking about how she'd pray for her daughter's soul not to be danged, and began loudly praying in my living room. I told her she needed to stop, and she began to calm down. Then tried telling my son's girlfriend that they could fix this, that the baby is still young enough to be deeply wanted by an adopting family. My son's girlfriend started crying, and I told her it was time to leave. She started saying I was sugarcoating things for these kids and that they have no clue how to raise a baby and they're too young. She called my son rude names and basically said he'd be working at the county for the rest of his life, and I told her she needed to get out of my house right now, very loudly, in which she obliged. Later on, I got a text on Facebook from her saying I was a horrible role model and shouldn't keep her from her daughter and that everyone would know what goes on behind my door. I went grocery shopping yesterday and our cashier, who I know, wouldn't talk to me. And today I was actually asked to leave my church that I've been going to for the past 10 years by a deacon. I'm truly so upset by this. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk here. They're just trying to support some kids who are going through a very tough time in their lives. Sadly, I think this is just a consequence of living in some kind of small town where everybody knows everybody, and especially one that seems to be pretty hyper-religious. I guess OP could play the gossip game and try to share their perspective, but sweet old Ma might be just too corrupting in the minds of everybody else. I mean, they're all just ready to outcast you and dump you from the town. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to retrieve a bracelet for a guest at the pool I'm a lifeguard at? I work at a large pool in Florida that has an artificial waterfall that guests can go behind. Yesterday, while I was on duty, a woman came up to me and said that she lost a bracelet directly under the waterfall. I was annoyed since we tell people not to wear jewelry in the pool, other than well-secured piercings, but I said I'd try to grab it. Swimming under the waterfall is quite difficult because it's high-pressure water. You can't really come up for air unless you swim past it, which is difficult if you're diving to the bottom because it's about 8 feet deep. Despite this, I attempted to dive down there with no goggles. As you might expect, I couldn't find the bracelet. I came up for air and was instantly waterboarded by the waterfall. I decided to go at it again and I still couldn't find it. After 2 attempts of diving down to 8 feet and holding my breath the whole time, I'd had enough and told the guest I couldn't find her bracelet. She started ranting at me about how lazy this generation is and demanded to speak to my manager. I explained to her that we actually empty the pool every night because it's fed by a spring and that I would check the pool for it tonight. She wouldn't relent, so I got the manager and he explained the same thing and asked her to leave her number so we'll call her if we find it. She then proceeded to get her belongings and leave. She didn't even return the key to the locker she rented. She didn't leave her number either. We did end up finding her bracelet, but we don't have any way to get it back to her, so it's just sitting in lost and found. Am I the jerk here? Should I have tried harder to find it initially? OP's definitely not the jerk here, and from the way they describe it, it sounds actually dangerous. So, having tried 2 times, being waterboarded, which is like a horrible experience, I don't blame OP for saying, listen, we're gonna drain it at night, we'll find it then. I already did more than enough in trying to find it for you. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend's mom that lying has consequences? So I, 23-year-old male, am dating Kelly, 25-year-old female. Kelly has 2 very nice mothers, Gina, 64-year-old female, and Stacy, 71-year-old female, that I get on with quite well. The problem relevant to this post is that Stacy has a history of lying very often about things both serious and not serious, which Kelly has complained to me about a few times. While the lying does bother me, mainly because it hurts Kelly's feelings and stresses her out, Kelly says she's trying to let it go and has just come to accept it as part of her mother's personality. Well, I went to run errands with Stacy last week, and when she forgot her wallet, I thought it was a genuine mistake. She's in her 70s, she's forgetting things, it's no big deal. I'll buy her the couple of things she needs and she'll get it back to me when she can. It wasn't until later that day when I was alone with Kelly and recounting my day that she stopped me and asked if Stacy had me pay for something. I said yes, and Kelly explained that this is something she does to everybody if they agree to go with her somewhere and she has or wants to buy something. She claims she forgot her wallet, asks you to pay, promises to pay you back, but almost never follows through. This was upsetting to hear, as I also don't like to be lied to and had not experienced Stacy lying to me yet. It's also not even about money for Stacy, as she has quite a bit to her name, no debt, and Gina pays most of the bills. Anyway, yesterday, Stacy asked me to come with her again for errands because she needed to pick up some things, and they're too heavy for her to handle. I agreed, and before we walked out the door, I said, "Oh wait, I forgot something," and went and grabbed my jacket. I asked her if she was sure that she also had everything she needed, specifically listing wallet, keys, and phone. She said yes. I asked if she checked before we stepped outside. She said yes again, so on we went. And after the initial errands, we stopped at the drugstore, and she ended up asking me to grab her something while I was inside, claiming she forgot her wallet again. The conversation went like this. I said, "I thought you had said you had everything you needed before we left." She said, "I did. I guess I was wrong." I reply, "You said you checked." She says, "I did." I reply, "So did you lie to me about having your wallet, or did you lie to me about checking for it?" She replies, "I don't know what you're talking about." I say, "Do you really not have it with you, or are you lying about that too?" She says, "Why are you having an attitude with me?" I reply, "Why did you lie to me?" She says, "It's not a big deal. If you don't want to help me, then I'm going home." I said, "I don't have an attitude. I'm just not going to deal with you lying to me. Lying has consequences." She was ticked, to say the least, and gave me the cold shoulder after this. And Kelly says she hasn't come out of her room since we got back from errands yesterday. Did I go overboard here? Yeah, there's no way OP went overboard here. OP was lied to. They were told this in confidence, and they proved it for themselves, and yeah, it's a really crappy thing to do to somebody. They're just embarrassed they got called out on it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my daughter if she actually washes her face? I, male 42, have a daughter, 16, Jo. Jo is one of my kids with my ex-wife. My ex has a job that has her traveling a lot, so Jo stays with me the majority of the time. Within the last year, maybe year and a half, Jo has gotten bad acne. I've gotten her multiple types of face wash and moisturizer, but her acne hasn't cleared up. So I figured it was just part of her being a teenager, and maybe that she wasn't always washing her face, and that's why it hasn't cleared up. Well, recently, Jo has been asking to go to a dermatologist because normal face wash and moisturizer don't work for her. I told her acne isn't that bad and she probably just needs to wash her face more often. Jo then told me that she's self-conscious about her acne and that she would appreciate going to the dermatologist and just seeing if they could do something for her. So I asked her if she actually washes her face every day, twice a day, or does she only do it when she feels like it? She started crying and ran up to her room. Less than an hour later, I got a call from my ex-wife calling me a huge jerk for accusing Jo of not washing her face, and that's why she has acne and that it could be hormones keeping her skin from getting clear. And she said she'll make sure Jo gets to the dermatologist when she's back in town. I didn't think I was the jerk, but my ex-wife is pretty ticked and called me a jerk multiple times. So, am I? Well, considering you bought her all of this stuff and she comes to you in confidence and says, I want to see a dermatologist, it's a reasonable assumption that she's been trying to do what she can to clear it up. What does OP think is going on here? That their kid's coming to them saying, hey, can I go to a dermatologist because they don't feel like washing their face and they just want some of that good dermatologist hookup stuff to clear it up for them instead? I think it's pretty clear OP is the jerk. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.